Welcome to the Well-Seasoned Librarian podcast. I am your announcer, Xavier, and this is Season 17, Episode 1. They say necessity is the mother of invention, and today's guest is proof that it can also be the secret ingredient to success. Today, our host Dean Jones is speaking with Carolyn Haeler, who brings a unique mix of heart and innovation to the world of gluten-free baking. Carolyn is the founder and CEO of Mightylicious Gluten. After her celiac diagnosis, she pivoted from a career in finance to solve a personal problem, finding a cookie that actually tasted like the real deal. Today, she's helping 1.3 million Americans on gluten-free diets do the same. With clean labels and 7 varieties now available in Walmart and stores nationwide, Mightylicious has taken the industry by storm, winning Best Product from Food and Beverage Magazine 2 years running. Most recently, their Coconut Oatmeal cookies were named one of Good Housekeeping's best snacks of 2025. Since November is Gluten-Free Awareness Month, Carolyn's timing couldn't be better. She's here to share her entrepreneurial journey, common GF pitfalls to avoid, and how hosts can make their holiday tables more inclusive. I will now take you to our conversation with Carolyn Haeler.
Welcome to the podcast. Today I'm speaking with CEO of Mightylicious, Carolyn Haeler. Carolyn, welcome to the podcast.
Hi, thanks so much for having me.
I want to start at the beginning. Being diagnosed with celiac disease must have been a significant turning point for you. Can you walk us through the moment and how it changed your relationship with food, particularly the baked goods that you once enjoyed?
Yes, that is a really good question. And it did have a profound impact on my life in ways that I didn't really understand and didn't anticipate at all. I was lived a gluten-full life for the first 31 years of my life, and I had been lucky enough to live abroad a few times. So I've eaten all of the pasta and eaten all of the croissants.
This episode is brought to you by Indeed. Stop waiting around for the perfect candidate. Instead, use Indeed sponsored jobs to find the right people with the right skills fast. It's a simple way to make sure your listing is the first candidates see. According to Indeed data, sponsored jobs have 4 times more applicants than non-sponsored jobs. So go build your dream team today with Indeed. Get a $75 sponsored job credit at Indeed.com/podcast. Terms and conditions apply.
And drank all of the beer from the homelands where they were invented and are supposed to be. So, and I love food and I love baking and I love cooking. So food has always been a hobby of mine. It's always been a passion of mine. I also love grocery shopping. I love going to grocery stores, things like that. In 2010, after 2010, 2011, I just recently graduated from business school. I'd moved to New York City. So I was in a new city. I was starting a new job in a new field. So I was starting my career in finance, and I started getting some indigestion. And at first I thought nothing of it. Talked to my GP about it just because it was new and something I hadn't had in the past. Over the course of the next 9 months, my immune system started failing. My stomach was distended, my hair was falling out, my skin had turned gray. And my doctor looked at me and said, "Well, maybe you have HIV." And I was like, this was after months of testing. And this was, we'd done elimination diets, we did blood tests, we did all these things. And imagine the crescendo of thoughts that go through your head as a single person in a new city, hearing that sort of diagnosis. Fortunately for me, about a week after he said this to me, I had a colonoscopy and endoscopy scheduled, and they found the antibody for gluten. And they were like, handed me a piece of paper and said, "You have celiac disease. Don't eat wheat or gluten." Handed me a sheet of paper and were like, "Go on your way." And when you hear this diagnosis, first of all, I was relieved because it wasn't something far more
Well,
serious
yeah.
and complex, right? So I felt like I had gained a lot of more control over my life at that point. I knew I was in control of healing my body and there was an answer. Um, what I didn't understand is how much gluten is in food. So when you think about gluten, you think about donuts and brownies and cakes and muffins and pasta and beer and things like that. But gluten is actually used in addition to wheat products and bakery products. It's used as a colorant, and it's used as a preservative, and it's used as a filler. So you'll find gluten in things like apple cider vinegar and caramel color. So it's also in Pepsi Cola, Coca-Cola, and ginger ale.
I
All
did
those
not know
have
that. Oh my
all those have
God.
anything that has caramel color in it has gluten in it. So most things have caramel color. If it's a processed food, it probably has caramel color in it. It can be found in spices. Everyday curry, cumin, cinnamon can have gluten in it because they use it as a filler. And they use so little of it that they don't have to claim it as an ingredient. However, I react to it. I am so sensitive that I react to trace amounts of gluten in 180 seconds after consuming. So I've been reacted to cinnamon before from Costco, and the ingredients say cinnamon, period. But there are trace amounts of gluten in there, and that could just be from cross-contamination as well. It can just be on a line that also processed flour or something like that. And it's also used as a preservative, so it can be found in things like cold cuts. It's in imitation crab, so California rolls has gluten in it. So it impacted my life in a way that I had no ability to appreciate prior to being diagnosed. So that really your life becomes really limited when you get a celiac disease diagnosis. Because when I eat gluten, it's not just an allergy. I don't just have a symptom. I have an autoimmune response where I create antibodies that attack my colon and destroy my colon, which is why
Right.
my hair was falling out and my skin was turning gray. Because even though I was eating things that didn't have gluten in them, because there are things that are naturally gluten free, I was
Right.
attacking my colon, so I was not able to absorb nutrition.
Right.
And it took me months to heal. So the impact to me physically was devastating. Learning that I had celiac disease was a relief, but it introduces a whole host of complications. And one of the things that I miss the most is bread, and not because I miss the taste of bread. I miss the convenience. I was working in finance. So I was getting up at 5 in the morning to get to work before the markets opened, working all day without being able to leave your desk because I was a stockbroker. So you have to answer the phone. So you don't leave your desk for the entire duration that the markets are open. And then I would work after hours into the morning, into the late hours of the day, prospecting and trying to get new clients. So I didn't see the sun come up or go down. And I wasn't able to leave my desk for the majority of those hours. And so not being able to have a sandwich became a huge struggle for me because a sandwich
Yeah.
solves so many problems for so many people. And once that's taken away from you, and there is gluten-free bread, of course, but gluten-free bread is made of rice flour, so it disintegrates. So you can make one fresh, but it's really hard to travel with it. Certainly not going to
Yes.
go with me from my apartment to the gym, on the subway and then all the last until, noon. So I
Yeah.
started to realize how important we is as a technology. And that's how I think about it now. Wheat is so much more than just like a grain or a grass or an ingredient. It's really a technology that fuels and really helps facilitate our lives and our lifestyles. So the impact, and I'll stop there because I've been talking a long time about this, but it is profound. And at that point, I lived with the disease before I started the company for 5 years, and I was frustrated both with the lack of convenience in my life. I was frustrated also with the psychological impact, like the things I miss. There's not necessarily cake or cupcakes, but I miss participating in the celebration because food is very ceremonial in our lives. Even
Yeah.
coffee and tea is extremely ceremonial. Cakes and cupcakes and all those celebratory things are extremely ceremonial and important. They sort of punctuate our memories in our lives, especially as younger people. I also miss having a cold beer in the summer, right?
Right.
I don't miss beer all the time, but I miss that feeling of being at the beach and being hot and then having a cold, crisp, frothy beer. Those types of things psychologically start to have an impact on you, where you are missing out in those celebratory memories. Not just, and so now I watch people eat cake, and there's nothing worse than watching someone else eat your birthday cake. And so I started to realize that this is so much bigger than just, it is first and foremost about my health and about my well-being, but it's so much more than that. And as I started thinking about how it impacted me as an adult who had 31 years of wonderful experiences with food, I started to feel really bad for the little kids who are fed gluten-free products, which are often very unsatisfying.
Yeah.
They meet your nutritional needs, but they're not emotionally, psychologically fulfilling or satisfying or satiating. Every time I had a terrible cookie or a terrible piece of cake or something that was just like I couldn't even finished swallowing it. I just felt so bad for the little kids who get diagnosed really young and never know what a brownie should taste like. Like everyone should know what a brownie really should taste like. And everyone should have that experience of having a warm baked cooking and it being the most wonderful thing and having it be a part of their core childhood memories and a part of their things that when they think about it, makes them feel comforted and secure and happy. And so many people who are diagnosed with food allergies don't have that. And so my mission was to start a company that not only met my dietary needs and restrictions, but also was satiating and satisfying emotionally and psychologically. So I wanted to create something that you could not tell was gluten-free. It tasted just like the food that you remembered.
I want to I want to ask him, you had a very successful career in finance. Was it scary for you to kind of transition from that to go into the competitive world of the food industry?
Terrifying. It was the hardest step to take. Starting the business, I sort of started it as a side hustle. I did leave my business, my job. I was really unhappy in my job when I started the company, which is part of the motivation for me. I literally just needed a cookie and I couldn't find one. I was like,
Yeah.
this is ridiculous. A cookie has no purpose other than to make you smile. It's not providing any nutrition of real value. It's not a meal. It's a snack, and its purpose is to like make you happy and like give you that little bit of joy that you need in that moment. And so many of the gluten-free cookies that I have had and were eating just didn't make me smile at all. They made me kind of sad, in fact. So I was like, someone's got to do this better. Why not me? I have a business background. I know how to bake. So I did leave my job in finance and started my company and baked 12 hours a day. It basically worked stockbroker hours, just baking. And learned how to bake from scratch and learned how to create a recipe that you can replicate and that is robust and can be made at different quantities and things like that, which is far more complicated than just sort of baking at home. Spent months doing it and created three recipes that were really stable. But after a few months, I realized I needed an actual income to support myself, to continue to live in Manhattan.
Yeah.
And so I became a stockbroker again and did stocks and bonds during the week, and then baked everything by hand at a small commercial kitchen in Queens on the weekends. And I did that for about a year until it became eventually my company started to take off. I actually started my company by creating these samples, and I sort of had a prototype that I was really proud of. I really liked it. I knew I could replicate um, the recipe and I could scale it. And I was like, okay, so I can scale this, I can replicate it, comes out consistently each time. So I took my cookies and I bought a tin Thai coffee bag off of Amazon. And I had a photo printer. So I printed out some labels, put my label on the bag, put my cookies in the bag, sealed it up with a hair flattening, a hair iron. So you can seal
Yeah.
packaging with a hair iron. So I had a hair iron and sealed it up, made it look really professional, or as professional as I could. And I lived on the Upper East Side of Manhattan. I walked into the Whole Foods there on 86th Street. And I was like, I still live, I'm pointing because I still live in Manhattan. And I was like, I'm looking for some feedback. I make gluten-free cookies. And I was just at the information booth right when you walk in. And the woman behind the counter said, oh, please go talk to Chris. He's in the bakery section. He's the team leader there. He'll talk to you about your gluten-free cookies. And I don't know what any of this means. So I just walk over to the bakery section. There's a man standing behind the cakes. And I was like, Chris? And he goes, yeah. And I was like, my name's Carolyn. I make gluten-free cookies. We'll love your feedback. And he comes around to the front and he tastes my cookies and he goes, this is the best gluten-free cookie I've ever tasted. I want you to go to Union Square into Brooklyn. I want you to ask for the team leaders, go to the bakery section, ask for the team leaders there, and let them try your product. And if we all like it and we email our regional team, they might onboard you to what's called our local forager program. Whole Foods still has this. And I was like, okay, sure. And I write this down, take notes. And I go, and this was on a Thursday, and I was being onboarded to the Forager program by Monday. And I launched in 3 Whole Foods in Manhattan. And by the end, within a few months, I'd grown to 10 locations. By the end of the year, which is 2019, I'd grown to the entire region, and I was going to expanding into a second region, so the North Atlantic and Northeast regions. And I had to actually transition my production from me doing it, because you can actually bake alone if you have the right equipment, cookies in about a half hour. You can make thousands of cookies in about a half hour. You can't package them that quickly though.
Right.
It's packaging that actually takes all the time.
Yeah.
So I was like, there was no way. Even by the time I'd grown, I had a couple assistants who helped me with the baking and the packaging, and they even delivered. Like originally, we were just delivering them out of the back of my truck. Um, on Mondays, and now I was like, this, I need a distributor. So I moved over to a manufacturing facility in New Jersey, and I've been there ever since. And yeah, I started making really good cookies, and it caught on because there is a gap in the market. It's there's a lot of gluten-free products out there, but there's not a lot of, if you buy a lot of gluten-free cookies and you put them on your table, and they all have different branding and different stories and different marketing, and they're different sizes, but then when you open them up and you look at them, they're all very similar. So there's not a tremendous amount of differentiation. So I had a lot of success in the beginning just with sort of my own grassroots attempts at sort of presenting something different to retailers and having someone with a lot of market power see the value in it.
The core premise of Mightylicious is that gluten-free doesn't have to mean bland. I have written recipes before, and I've actually, funny, I just had to retool one this morning that had some errors in it when I was submitting it to a cookbook author. And it's tough to write recipes and fine tune things and hone it. What was that like for you when you were developing the recipes for the cookie and the GF free flour, the GF flour and other things?
Challenging. I mean, I am not kidding when I say, like, and I approached it. One of the things that people often ask me, how did you go to finance and baking, and how is that related? Baking is chemistry and it's calculus.
Yes.
It's very technical, and I'm a very numerical, detail-oriented person. I'm also very sort of I have an art degree as well, so I am very go with the flow and sort of improvisational as well, and creative. So I sort of excel at the intersection of those two things, something that requires a lot of technical ability combined with sort of artistry. I do really well at, and they're not easy. It's not easy to find those intersections in life. And so when I started really getting into the recipes, at first I started the R&D process by just like downloading like the New York Times bestseller, like Cookie of the Year and all these different things, and trying to buy one-to-one flour, and it failed miserably. Like I had mountains of cookies that I just weren't even edible, that I just threw away. And then I got into researching about baking and about what a cookie is and how is a cookie different from a muffin or a cake, and what makes a cookie, and started to realize and hone in on the fact that, not because I've removed the gluten or removed the wheat flour from the recipe, there's nothing I can do to replace that one-to-one on the market. I have to come up with a whole new flour recipe to replace the wheat flour. And I have to figure out how to replace the gluten and the protein that you've lost by removing the gluten, to make the recipe work. Because gluten in a recipe is the flavor, it's the color, it's the strength and the structure. And remove those three things, you've basically removed the entire foundation of the baked product. What happens is you don't have this flexibility of strength. And when you don't have the flexibility and the ability to expand and contract easily, the baked good doesn't formulate. It either turns into a puddle, and there's no structure. I'm sure you've seen that before. That can happen with wheat flour, by the way, but it almost always happens with gluten flour. Or you could add a lot more flour to add in sort of bulk, but then you end up with something that's dry and gritty, which is unappetizing. I'm sure a lot of your listeners have had that experience as well, where they've tasted a gluten-free product that was just gritty and grainy and dry and lifeless. And so I wanted to avoid both of those things. And what I discovered was I had to replace the protein. And so I did that by adding whole milk powder to my blend. I specifically didn't want to use an ancient grain. And I have nothing against the ancient grains. I think they're lovely. Quinoa, amaranth, sorghum, millet, garbanzo bean. Wonderful. In savory applications, they're incredible. But when you bake them past 150 degrees, they develop a very bitter and acrid flavor and aftertaste.
Yeah.
And that's all you taste. Even if you have butter and vanilla in your baked good, when you have an acrid, bitter flavor and they build on your tongue, so the more you eat it, the stronger you taste it. And so I was like, I can't bake with these ancient grains because that's the problem with gluten-free baking is that bakers replace the lack of protein with these ancient grains because they're higher in protein than rice flour. However, they taste bad, so then you don't want to eat it. So I was left with this dilemma. So I replaced the protein with whole milk powder, which is not unique to me. Lots of bakeries do this. Like if you buy a cake, like a professional cake for a party, for a birthday or a wedding, they've added whole milk powder, unless you requested they didn't, to make it have better flavor, have better texture, to rise better, just improves the overall quality of the baked good. So I added the milk powder. That still didn't solve the issue of it being gritty and grainy. And what I learned was that in the US and basically everywhere, with perhaps the exception of Japan, rice flour is milled for cooking, not for baking. So it's milled to a consistency of almost a very, very fine sand, like sand you find in a kid's sandbox, as opposed to wheat flour or cornstarch or things that are commonly used in baking, which are milled to a powder consistency that feels like silk. And so I tried to find fine milled rice flour and I couldn't. So today we work directly with mills in California to mill our flour to a consistency so that it's super fine and can absolutely actually absorb the moisture and homogenize and create a dough. So I now have so I had now created a flour blend that was neutral in flavor, had no bitter aftertaste or weirdness to it, had enough protein in it to be able to withstand the baking process, and was milled fine enough to actually homogenize and create a a soft and luscious dough. And so that took months and hundreds of thousands of hours to figure that out because there's so many different, I mean, my flour blend has tapioca starch in it, cornstarch, whole milk powder, brown rice flour, potato starch, and white rice flour. And all of those can be added to the blend at different ratios. So imagine the permutations. That's where the calculus comes in. Ratios before you find something that is actually perfect and works. So that just the flour portion of it took months and thousands of hours. But once I had it, everything clicked and everything worked.
Yeah, I wanted to talk about that a little bit because so I tried working with the flour and I found it was very easy to use. And I used the recipe on the back for the pancakes and it turned out wonderfully. And I made some waffles with it. I was able to make some muffins with it using recipes for gluten-free flour, and it was very nice. I think I expected it to be difficult or, laborious, but it ended up being very, very easy to use. I mean, that must be very satisfying after all the work you put in to kind of fine tune that, right?
It is. I mean, now when I start baking, as opposed to being worried, will this work? I can just focus on how do I make this better, if that makes sense. Because
Yeah.
how do I take this recipe and make it even more incredible? And that is a relief that brings a lot of the fun and the joy back into baking because you're now talking about a creative process as opposed to just the technical process. And I'm glad you said that because I really appreciate that. What is wonderful about the flour is that it works for everything. I've made sourdough with it. I make pancakes with it. Obviously, I use it in all of my cookies. This Thanksgiving, I made pies and crumble pies with it. You really can use it for anything. You can even make croissants with it. I've never attempted it, but I know it'll work.
Yeah.
It really is a wonderful product. You can use it one for one. I always tell people that I never bake a gluten-free recipe one for one because there is nothing that is exactly the same as wheat flour. However, you can do it. Like I'm always going to make some subtle tweaks to a recipe. I always like to add some sort of liquid sweetener to it, whether it's maple syrup or honey or agave, because rice is so much harder than wheat flour, just as a grain. It's just a much harder much harder grain. So adding a little bit more moisture is really going to help those baked goods have a better texture. It is a natural humectant, so it's going to make it last longer. So I am always going to tweak a recipe. But if you take the Nestle Toll House chocolate chip cookie recipe and my flour blend, you can replace it 1-to-1 and have a wonderful cookie. And that is the convenience and the luxury that I think that people who have an autoimmune disease or an allergy or living a lifestyle should have. They shouldn't have to start from scratch figuring out how many different flour blends they need to buy or flour ingredients they need to buy to create pancakes, right? It's also
Yeah.
expensive having to have, like, I have pantries filled with different kinds of flours because I'm constantly sort of
Oh,
blending
yeah.
our and it's expensive to have
Yes.
tapioca starch, potato starch, corn starch, wheat rice flour, brown rice flour, garbanzo bean flour, quinoa flour, coconut flour. Like, it's just extremely expensive, where wheat flour costs like 5 cents per pound if you're buying it from Costco.
Absolutely.
Which is when you start to realize that wheat flour is a technology, because it can
Yeah.
do more than all of those flours combined can do, right?
Right.
It can make the most chewy, tough, strong sourdough crust and loaf, and it can make the most tender, delicate, angel food cake. And all you have to do
Oh,
is,
yeah.
right? And so that is tremendous. It can be savory, it can be sweet, it can go with lemons, it can go with anything without competing with the flavor. It actually most of the time is amplifying the flavor and adding just the right amount of savory to the sweet application without overpowering it or even being detectable. I mean, wheat is an incredible technology. And when that's taken away from you, replacing it is just impossible. So though I'm a very determined person. I was like, I'm going to do this. I'm not going to just make a gluten-free product that is acceptable. I'm going to make a gluten-free product that's exceptional. And then I realized I couldn't really articulate, because this is part of the business side of it, like, everyone says, oh, try my gluten-free cookies, they're the best, right? And everyone's had that experience. I have celiac disease, and you're like, that's not even edible. Not only is it not the best, like, it's not great at all. It's not even good. And you're like, and it's expensive and it's disappointing. And you're going through this like crescendo of emotions over a cookie. And you're like, I don't need this in my life. The cookie was just meant to be like a little snack before I get to lunch. Um, and so I wanted to solve that problem. And I have both the, motivation and the determination to do that. And I realized that in order to explain to people why are my cookies, without them tasting them, because oftentimes you're just telling a story, why is this better, when I can explain what makes my flour different and why the other flours fail, then they start to understand the level of ingenuity and dedication it required to make my products. And everything I say makes so much sense once you've heard the story, that people started to believe me. And I was like, this is not only the most important part of the recipe, but it's also the most important part of my story, because it's really where the R&D and where the innovation came in.
You know, I have to be honest, I just started eating the cookies without looking at the packaging, and I dove into them. I guess I'm a typical guy in that regard, but like, I was enjoying the cookies, and then I started looking at the wonderful packaging and seeing things that kind of caught my eye, like certified kosher, non-GMO, vegan, dairy-free, soy-free. You had a lot of distinction in the products, which was really wonderful for me, because I had a friend over who normally, when we go to restaurants, she has to say, I can't have gluten, I can't have dairy, and I could say, oh, I have cookies for you, and she was so thrilled. And it's nice to be able to kind of see these things available when oftentimes it's not the norm. Can we talk a little bit about that and how that you use that approach in your brand philosophy?
Yeah, so I appreciate that question because it was really important to me. Um, I wanted to create a product that you can't tell is gluten-free, non-GMO, dairy-free, egg-free, vegan, whatever it happens to be. But I also want to create the best product possible. So like, one of my second best-selling product is my brown butter chocolate chip. And people
Yeah.
have been like, can you make this vegan? And I've said no, because you can't replace brown butter. We actually take butter and we brown it
Yeah.
to get it's really browned butter. It's not a flavoring. And I
Yeah.
can't do that vegan, but I did make a vegan chocolate chip, which is my number 3 best-selling cookie. That is phenomenal. And my wife, who is not gluten-free or vegan, prefers that to any other of my products. It's an incredible product. So first and foremost, I want to make something that tastes delicious. It has to be the best thing that I can make. And I'm not going to change an ingredient to make it better for you if I can't make it better with that ingredient. That being said, my best-selling product is my number one best-selling cookie is my vegan, gluten-free, non-GMO, soy-free oatmeal coconut cookie. It's my
That's my
best-selling.
favorite. That's
Yeah,
my favorite.
and that doesn't surprise me. And it's all of those things, and it's the best I can make it. So as long as I can make it the best and I can get it vegan and gluten-free and soy-free and non-GMO and all the frees, then I'm going to do it. So first and foremost is flavor, texture, palatability, all the things that are required to have a wonderful eating experience. And then I'm going to tackle making it allergen friendly and gluten free. I mean, it will always be gluten free because I can't be brown wheat flour, but it has to be the best I can make it. But because I was able to create, so that cookie, the oatmeal coconut, came about because I was physically at a Whole Foods talking to the team there, and they're like, the gluten free is great, gluten free is growing, but you know what's really growing, Carolyn? Vegan. Can you make us a vegan gluten free cookie? And I was like, you want me to bake without flour, butter, or eggs? Do you know what baking is? Baking is flour, butter, and eggs. That's the holy
Yeah,
trinity of
yeah,
baking.
basically.
Like, what are you talking about?
Yeah,
But when Whole Foods asks you to do something, you do it.
yeah.
So that it was around the holidays again, and my mother-in-law served me these oatmeal coconut cookies. They were gluten-free because she was gluten-free, but they were a 100-year-old recipe from my wife's side of the family, from her great 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 grandma. And they were never would have thought of putting oatmeal and coconut together, though I both like both those ingredients, but I would never think, oh, that's delicious. And this cookie is sweet, it's salty, it's exotic, it's fruity. It's just so satisfying. It's comforting, sort of, because the oatmeal is really, it's just wonderful. And I was like, God, that's one of the best cookies I've ever had. And I knew enough at this point, like I'd been baking for years at this point, and I was like, coconut is really structurally has a lot of structure and body. And so does oatmeal. Oatmeal is really gelatinous and it really has a lot of body. I may be able to, because the only protein, when you remove wheat, the only protein we have left is in the butter and the eggs, and primarily the eggs. For baking without eggs, it's very hard to do. Um, and I was like, oh, well, this is the recipe I'm going to try. And I made it, and I was like, it was so successful, so amazing, vegan, gluten-free, all those things, that I actually ended up creating an entire line that was vegan and gluten-free. That was not my intention from the beginning. It was because Whole Food asked me. I then created the vegan chocolate chip, and those became my number one and number three best-selling cookies. They were so successful, and there's such demand for it that I converted my double Dutch chocolate chip to be vegan, and it's even better vegan, so I had no problem with that. And then I converted my oatmeal raisin to be vegan as well, and both of those are, I think, better vegan than they are, because when you add palm oil, it actually improves the chewiness of the
Yeah.
cookie, and it helps with the shelf life. So removing the butter out of them and replacing it with palm oil, RSPO certified, don't worry, palm oil, actually improve the texture and the experience of the cookie, because with the oatmeal raisin, the star is really the cinnamon and the spices, and with the double Dutch, the star is really the chocolate. So removing the butter actually didn't compete with those flavors and actually improved the texture of the cookie. So I now have 4 cookies that are vegan, gluten-free, non-GMO, and 2 of them are in my top 3 bestsellers. So with innovation and trial and errors, some beautiful things happen, even if it might be challenging. And then I was like, I love that. I'm not vegan because I'm already gluten-free and that's been forced on me. But oatmeal coconut, the 2 cookies I eat the most, they're not necessarily my favorite in my brain, but the ones I eat the most are the oatmeal coconut and the oatmeal raisin, because they're so comforting. And when I need a cookie, I want comfort. That's usually when I reach for a cookie, is when I'm like, need to smile and need a little like hug. And so I reach for the 2 that I find the most comforting, not necessarily the most delicious. I mean, brown butter chocolate chip is divine. But those are the 2 that I eat the most, and they're vegan, gluten-free. So yeah, it's a line that I'm extremely proud of, and it's something that's really resonated with consumers, as people are wanting things that taste good but are better for them and better for the environment and the planet.
It's funny. I took them to work, not all of them, because I'm not stupid. I'm going to keep some for myself, obviously. But especially the oatmeal coconut. But I took them to work, and I got feedback from my coworkers, and they're kind of like me. None of them looked at the labeling; they just started eating them, because break room, you have so much time. And they developed kind of a culture around the cookies. And the one feedback that I got that I had thought of, especially with the oatmeal ones, because the oatmeal ones, normally when you get oatmeal cookies of any manufacturer, I'm not going to name names, they tend to be uh, dry. And
Mhm.
these were not dry. And one thing that everybody mentioned was there was a freshness to the cookies. There was no sense of like ossification you get with a lot of cookies that you've probably been on
Mhm.
on the shelf in the store for a year or two, and you eat them in their a little work. And these weren't. These were very soft and had a really nice homemade fresh texture, which I really was surprised at. I didn't expect it to be that nice. It was so very fresh, and it really had a homemade kind of component to it. I think I could have actually probably took them to work on a plate and said I made them, and people would believe it because they had that
I've had
kind
people do
of,
that. They're like, I have
yeah.
to go to the party. Took them
Because
out,
it would,
unpacked them, put them on a plate.
because that's how they feel like you. It would be very believable. I couldn't take Chips Ahoy to work and say, oh, I named a name, but anyway, you get the idea. I couldn't take that to work and put it on a plate, and people go, "Oh, that's homemade." Nobody would believe that. Your cookies, I could, and there became like a thing. I saw people doing this was they were putting the chocolate chips specifically on a plate and nuking them for about 2 seconds,
Mhm.
and they were very much like fresh out of the oven that way. And
Mhm.
that was like kind of the pro tip everybody was giving
Well,
each
you
other.
you you do work with some foodies.
Yeah, librarians are foodies. Yeah,
Taking it to the next level.
yeah. So that was good. And like people were taking, oh, like one person took home the peanut butter, salted peanut butter,
Mm,
and they were nuking him for a couple seconds and then crumbling him into ice cream.
yep.
And that became the wanted. And they're like, can you bring more? I'm like, you need to buy them yourself.
Yeah, so my VP of sales who joined my team about a year and a half ago, he's not gluten-free or vegan. And in order to get him to join my team, I had to send him samples, and he's very much a foodie. And neither he nor his wife are gluten-free or vegan. And he's like, I have to buy those oatmeal coconut cookies all the time just so my wife can crumble them over vanilla ice cream because it's her favorite dessert now. They
Yep.
are
Yep.
wonderful. You can make ice cream sandwiches with them. But I
Yep.
appreciate you saying that because that was the purpose. I wanted, like, manufacturer cookies are often, like a Chips Ahoy. That's actually not the worst, where they look like little hockey pucks. They're often
Yep.
really pale in color. They're not, there's no like variation or gradation to the edge. It's all sort of very square, even though they're circular. It looks like a little wheel. And my cookies don't look like that. There's also no preservatives in them. Just so you know, the only preservative that's in there is grape juice and rice syrup. Those are natural
Yeah.
humectants, as I mentioned, and then salt. Those are the only, it's all just natural preservatives. But we do, like, I take the freshness very seriously. And I appreciate you mentioning the oxidation, because what happens with gluten-free products and all products, whether it's Chips Ahoy or Oreo, is that you have to give the retailers a 9-month shelf life. That's the minimum. What they
Hmm.
want is 24 months or infinity. They want like,
Yeah.
um, and so cookies are not, any baked good really is meant to be baked and consumed that day, which is why
Right.
there's a phrase called day olds at a bakery. Those were from yesterday. And then there's half price the following day because they're no longer fresh. That's how quickly the oxidation happens. Um, and so I am very committed to the freshness of our cookies. So we don't bake and then put them in storage and then fill orders. We bake each order for the purchase orders we receive. So when we get a purchase order from one of our customers, we get it and we have a 2 week we we have a 2 week wait time or ship time. So we bake within those 2 weeks and then ship out the order to them. So we are never sitting on our inventory. If we always have inventory, but it's never in our warehouse for longer than 30 days. And we try to bake to order as much as we can. Um, and then, oh, sorry. Hi, baby. Mommy's in a meeting. Can you give me a kiss? Sorry.
No, I'm a parent. Yeah. Aw.
It's Kaylin. Where's my
Hi,
baby?
Caitlin.
Can you give mommy a minute and then I'll come snuggle you? She's just glaring at me.
I'm sorry.
Okay, Marilyn, can you come grab this one? All right. All right. Huggies. She just got back from school. It's
Oh,
cold. Look at those rosy cheeks. Can you say hi? Okay.
hi.
Mommy just needs 5 minutes and then I'll make you a snack. You want popcorn? Okay, you want to participate with mommy?
That's totally cool.
You can sit here, but you can't talk, okay? Okay.
Okay. I wanted to ask about the peanut butter, the salted peanut butter, because those must be a hit with peanut butter lovers. And I would say that one I think would be very challenging to get people to believe those were store-bought if you took them to a party and put them on a plate.
Yeah, so when I started, that was one of my first cookies that I created. The first one I ever created was my brown butter chocolate chip. Then I
Yeah,
created Double Dutch, which is similar to the brown butter chocolate chip in the chemistry, but when you add cocoa powder or anything, the chemistry blows up a little bit. But that was sort of the
yeah.
base for the recipe, then adding a lot of different chocolate to make it delicious. And then I was like, what do you need? Vanilla, chocolate? And I was like, peanut butter. I just really wanted to hit those three really indulgent flavors because people are often either vanilla, chocolate, or peanut butter people. I feel like that's a pretty broad, good spectrum of the indulgences. And I wanted a really incredible peanut butter cookie. And I discovered peanut butter, because peanuts are a legume, actually can replace a flour altogether. And I'd been doing so much flour blending that that was a relief to me. So I created a recipe that's not only gluten-free, but it's grain-free and it's dairy-free. So it's a grain-free, dairy-free product. And that cookie only has 5 ingredients, and it's somewhere on the spectrum of cookie slash fudge. It is
Yeah.
so moist and decadent and chewy and delightful that if I baked it just slightly less, you could sell it as a peanut butter fudge. And it's, don't tell anyone this, but it's 40% peanut butter.
It's wonderful. It also went fast. Like
Yeah.
among all the librarians and the volunteers and the workers, it was gone within, I think, 20 minutes,
Yeah. I
which
mean, if
is,
you are a peanut butter
fast.
person, you will not find anything, even at bakeries, it'll be hard to find a cookie like this.
Yeah,
Because
I mean, with a
peanut
cup of
butter is an
coffee, it's
expensive
just magic.
ingredient. Who's going to put 40% peanut butter in their cookie except for me?
Yeah.
Most cookies have like 10%, 15% peanut butter. That is nearly 50% peanut butter.
Yeah,
It's
I
a
mean, I
little,
loved all the cookies, but that one and the coconut oatmeal, I just really loved because I was like, kind of sorry to bring them to work because I was like, I should have saved all these for myself.
yes. And those are the ones on vanilla ice cream, on chocolate ice cream as a, oh my gosh, just
Mightylicious is now available in Walmart stores nationwide. What are the biggest hurdles you face scaling from a concept in your kitchen to national distribution? And what advice would you give somebody who's considering the same thing?
oh my gosh, there's so many hurdles. It's not even funny. But the biggest hurdle to national distribution is literally finding the distributor. The biggest obstacle that you're going to face as someone launching a brand, and I don't think it matters what kind of product it is, if it's food, or even I'm sure if anything in CPG, is to get into a retailer of even modest size, like it's a store, a retail chain, maybe a regional chain that has, 16 stores, 8 stores. To get into them, not even Walmart or Whole Foods or anyone like that, you have to have a distributor. So you go to the
Yeah.
distributor and you're like, I need distribution. In order to get into the distributor, you have to have a contract with a national brand. So you're just in this chicken and egg scenario, talking to retailers, talking to distributors, and each one of them is sending you back to the other one, which is why getting to Whole Foods so early was um, such a game changer. I didn't even realize it at the time. I got into their forager program, which allowed me to just distribute locally, which is all I could handle. Build up some of my brand equity and prove the concept of my cookies. And then I was able to grow regionally with them. So I only needed regional distribution. And then once I had some regions within Whole Foods, then their competitors couldn't ignore me. Once you're in a one store and they have regional competitors, then their competitors can't say, I don't want you, because then their customers are going somewhere else to get your product. And
Right.
that's how you evolve. And there are some stores that there's certain retailers and chains who are innovators and they want to take risks, like Whole Foods. They want the up and coming things, even though they're a national brand, they want to have emerging trends and products for their consumers. And then there's other brands who are like, until you hit X number of sales, we won't even talk to you. So it's about finding those customers that want to take the risk on you and want to be the leaders in the industry and in innovation, getting them to bring you on. Once they say yes, a distributor will say yes. Once you're in the distributor, now you have access to their network, and now you can go to all of their customers. It is a lot of door knocking. It is a lot of rejection in the beginning. It's a lot of this is where my background in being a stockbroker came in, because as a stockbroker, we have a saying, and it goes, you have to get to 100, you have to go through 100 no's to get to one yes.
Yeah.
So your job as a stockbroker is to accumulate no's as quickly as you can, so that you can finally get to one yes. And that's how you build your business. So you are trained emotionally how to deal with all of that rejection. But in the beginning, it's going to be a lot of door knocking. I walked into lots of stores with my cookies until I found someone to say yes.
Now, the primary appeal of these products are for people with celiac disease or gluten sensitivity. But, anybody could, like I said, I took them to work. I've eaten them myself. I don't think most people would look at what it's made out of. They would just eat it because it's good. What is the most memorable piece of customer feedback you've received that made all the work feel worth it for you, though?
That is a good question. I don't know that there's one, but I will say that, I love the stories from the gluten-free and celiac community and the better for you allergen community. People say, my kid won't eat anything, but he loves your cookies and I can feel safe. So that's amazing to me. But I know that I've hit the mark when people like you and people like my VP of sales who are foodies and are like, I don't eat gluten-free because I don't have to, and it's not good. And then they're become my most loyal customers. And are willing to pay for a little bit. My cookies are not the most expensive, but they are premium cookies, so they have a little bit more of an expensive price tag to them. You're not going to find them for $2.99 on the bargain shelf, and are willing to pay that extra for a high quality product because they enjoy it, not because they have to buy it. And that to me means, I've gotten it right.
Now, you got past the hurdle of convincing people that gluten-free cookies could be delicious. You achieved that. Now that you've achieved that, what's the next big myth or challenge you're hoping to tackle in the allergen-friendly market?
Yeah, I think that with the launch of I launched the cookies, and now I've launched the bakery blends that we've mentioned. So I have two flour blends. I have the gluten-free flour blend, and then I have a vegan flour blend. The vegan flour blend has coconut milk powder instead of whole milk powder. And then I also have a brownie mix. And I wanted to, like, what I'm passionate about is getting people to bake gluten-free and to enjoy it and to experiment with it, because there is no cookbook. There isn't the chemistry, documentation doesn't exist for this community. And so I really want to bring back the joy of baking to the gluten-free and allergen-friendly community and facilitate innovation.
Now, for the 1.3 million Americans on gluten-free diets who haven't yet discovered Mightylicious, what is the one flavor you want to recommend they try first?
Oh my gosh, that's such a hard question.
Yeah.
Please try one of my chocolate chips. I think so. Oatmeal coconut, obviously we discussed. It's my bestseller. Everyone loves it. Please try that. But we're a chocolate chip nation, and I'm going to win you over with one of those two flavors. So if you're gluten-free, try the brown butter. If you're vegan and gluten-free, try the vegan gluten-free. And if you just like chocolate chip, please try both. Tell me which one is your favorite.
Carolyn, I want to thank you for being on the podcast. For those who are listening, we're going to have links in the bio to go and purchase the items. Carol, thank you for being with us today.
Thank you so much.
Thank you for listening to Season 17, Episode 1 of The Well-Seasoned Librarian. I am your announcer, Xavier. We've just heard our host, Dean Jones, in conversation with Carolyn Haeler, the founder and CEO of Mightylicious Gluten-Free Foods. After being diagnosed with celiac disease at age 31, Carolyn set out on a mission to create the perfect gluten-free cookie when she couldn't find one on the market. Through dedication and trial and error, Mightylicious was born in New Jersey. For more information about the company, their products, and Carolyn's journey, please check the links in our show notes. Be sure to join us next time for another scintillating conversation with a food luminary. Until then, we will see you in the library.